Devaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
November 19th, 2021. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, entitled Bhagavatam is the Answer to All Questions, text 41. Sattvam Raja Tama Iti Tisra Sura Dvi Naraka Tatra Api Ekaikasha Rajan Vidyante Gataya Tridha Yada Ekaikatara Anyabhyam Svabhava Upahanyate Sattvam Rajastama Iti Tisrasura Nrinaraka Tatrapyekai Kashorajan Vidyante Gatayastridha Yadai Kaikataronyabyam Svabhava Upahanyate Sattvam Rajastama Iti Tisrasura Nrinaraka Tatrapyekai Kashorajan Vidyante Gatayastridha Yadai Kaikataronyabyam Svabhava Upahanyate
Sattvam Rajastamiti
Sattvam Rajastama Iti
Tisasura Ninaraka
Tisrasura Nrinaraka
Tatrapyekai Kashorajan
Tatrapyekai Kashorajan
Vidyante Gatayastira
Vidyante Gatayastridha
Yadaikai Kataronyabhyam
Yadaikaikataronyabhyam
Svabhava Upahanyate
Svabhava Upahanyate
Sattvam Rajastama Iti
Sattvam Rajastama Iti
Tisrasura Nrinaraka
Tisrasura Nrinaraka
Tatrapyekai Kashorajan
Tatrapyekai Kashorajan
Vidyante Gatayastida
Vidyante Gatayastridha
Yadaikataronyabhyam
Yadaikaikataronyabhyam
Svabhava Upahanyate
Svabhava Upahanyate. Hare Krishna. Sattvam, the mode of goodness.
the mode of goodness.
Raja, the mode of passion. Tama, the mode of darkness.
The mode of darkness.
Iti, thus. Tisra, the three. Sura, demigod. Nri, human being. Naraka, one who is suffering hellish conditions. Tatra api, even there. Ekaikasha, another. Rajan, O king. Vidyante, divide into. Gataya, movements. Tridha, three. Yada, at that time. Ekaikatara, one in relationship with another. Anyabhyam, from the other. Svabhava, habit. upahanyate,
upahanyate,
develops.
Develops.
Translation: according to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three. And thus, each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The living entities individually are being conducted by a particular mode of nature, but at the same time, there is every chance of their being influenced by the other two. Generally, all conditioned souls in the material engagement are influenced by the mode of passion, because every one of them is trying to lord it over the material nature to fulfill his individual desire. But in spite of the individual mode of passion, there is always the chance of being influenced by the other modes of nature by association. If one is in good association, he can develop the mode of goodness. And if in bad association, he may develop the mode of darkness or ignorance. Nothing is stereotyped. One can change his habit by good or bad association, and one has to become intelligent enough to discriminate between good and bad. The best association is the service of the devotees of the Lord, and by that association, one can become the highest qualified man by the grace of the Lord's pure devotees. As we have already seen in the life of Srila Narada Muni, he became the topmost devotee of the Lord simply by the association of pure devotees of the Lord. By birth, he was the son of a maidservant and had no knowledge of his father and no academic education, even of the lowest status. But simply by associating with the devotees and by eating the remnants of their foodstuff, he gradually developed the transcendental qualities of the devotees. By such association, his taste for chanting and hearing the transcendental glories of the Lord became prominent. And because the glories of the Lord are non-different from the Lord, he got direct association with the Lord by means of sound representation. Similarly, there is the life of Ajamila, 6th canto, who was the son of a Brahmin and was educated and trained properly in the discharge of the duties of a Brahmin, but who, in spite of all this, because he contacted the bad association of the prostitute, was put into the path of the lowest quality of Chandala, or the last position for a human being. Therefore, the Bhagavatam always recommends the association of the Mahat, or the great soul, for opening the gate of salvation. To associate with persons engaged in lording it over the material world means to enter into the darkest region of hell. One should try to raise himself by the association of the great soul. That is the way of the perfection of life. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunli Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamutiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 41. Sattvam Rajas Tama Iti Tisra Surenvi Naraka Tatrapye Kai Kasho Rajan Vidyante Gatayas Tridha Yadai Kai Kataronyabhyam Swabhava Upahanyate. According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, There are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the second canto. And so this verse, in the verse and purport, so like all conditioned life, all living entities, it's Prabhupada says that generally all conditioned souls of material engagement are influenced by the mode of passion, because every one of them is trying to lord it over the material nature to fulfill his individual desire. So that's passion. I'll fulfill my my desires separate from Krishna's desires. So that's rajas. And we could equally say that everyone, material life means ignorance. Like it's intrinsically an ignorance, right? We are in the ignorant illusion that I am this body. Just days ago, we were in the Safatov 3. So we talk about the different elements of the human context, the material context. That includes the intrinsic defects of the material senses, mistakes, cheating, limitations, and illusion. The example that Prabhupada most often gives when illustrating what does illusion mean, the core illusion that I am this body. That's what it means to be conditioned. I'm conditioned to believe that something is true that is not true. I am this body. And then from that, so many other illusions expand. Yes. So, yes. Okay, we're good now. Yeah. All right. So passion, ignorance. All right. So then, key point here. So Prabhupada says, nothing is stereotyped. One can change his habit by good or bad association, and one has to become intelligent enough to discriminate between good and bad, right? So this is not a fatalistic philosophy, right? Just like, so Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he describes this as like a machine, yantra. Ishvara sarvabhutanam ridesha junatistati brahmayan sarvabhutane yantra udani maya. Yes, all living entities are stuck like on a machine made of material energy. So we're on a particular machine made of the three modes of nature, and then we're just we're like trapped in that machine. So, but it's not like a dictum-y fatalistic philosophy. First of all, we chose and we choose each moment which modes of nature, which combination of the modes of nature to associate with, and then we're on the machine. And so we're responsible for being on the machine, whether it's a machine of a worm in stool, or the machine of a blade of grass, or the machine of a human body. We created that. We attracted that according to our desire. And we can, particularly in the human form of life, we can change where we are on the machine. That's what this whole purport's about. We can change where we are on the machine by our use of free will. And that's why Bhagavatam begins, Dharma Projita Kuntika Paramonima Samanam Satam Deja Vastu Macha Vastu Shivadam Tapo Chanmalim. The highest truth is reality, distinguish from illusion for the welfare of all. So to make discriminations, that's where like it's also a theme, right? To make distinctions, right? Power, there's power in the capacity to make distinctions. Knowledge is power. Intelligence means the capacity to make distinctions. We're powerful to the extent of our capacity to make distinctions here between what sort of action, what sort of thought, what sort of emotion is this going to entangle me in tamas or rajas, or this is going to begin to liberate me in sattva, and what's going to help me to transcend the machine altogether. That's called Shuddha Sattva. It's like beyond sattva. It's completely spiritual. Emphasizes that. So so in like philosophy or theology over the years and centuries, there's the whole sort of debate around voluntarism, free will, or determinism, right? Deterministic, reductionistic, mechanistic. And so it's all neatly resolved here to the extent that we've implicated ourselves, attached ourselves to the lower modes, Rajas, Tamas, then it is mechanistic, deterministic, reductionistic. Then it is. Then it is just like we're on a machine. And then those philosophies where there's not really free will, and it's just right. And those philosophies are valid. We can, as we go lower in the modes, we see whether it's like a dog or a woman's stool, like there's not much free choice happening. Right? So, and in the human form, to the extent that we're associating in lower modes, and maybe should I have vodka or bourbon? That's my free choice. Okay, right. So, all right, should I turn to the football game or the baseball game? Okay, some free choice. Okay. So,
French fries or pasta.
French fries or pasta? Yeah. I feel he's getting me back for feedback, Archie. Another salad too. We can do. Hare Krishna, Bhakti George, welcome.
Hare Krishna.
So, so to the extent that we associate with lower modes, then it is deterministic. And to the extent that we associate with higher modes, sattva, surya sattva, then there's free will. Then it's not like we're on a machine. Okay, then there's free will. Then that's truly what it means to be a master, right? Then I'm responding to the human context purposefully. I'm not just gunas means ropes or strings, right? So lower modes means pull, and we get into the higher modes of transcendence, then I'm pulling my own strings, not just the illusion of them. Okay, so then the voluntarism, then that philosophy is valid. So Prabhupada, he gives two interesting examples in the purport here. This is text 41, chapter 10, canto 2. So he gives the example of Narada Muni. So Narada Muni was born in very lower modes. It seems he didn't know who his father was, right? So like low modes. And says, then he's just stuck there on that machine, sub-sudra. No. So he associated with Bhakti Vedantas. And they initiated him through prasadam. It's an interesting pastime. Yeah. Maybe it was French fries or pasta. It takes a whole different feeling if it's prasadam. So it's described. So then through the association, actually described through the remnants of their prasadam. We don't hear their teachings to him. Maybe they did teach him, but we know he took remnants of their prasadam. Then he became pure devotee, changed. So Prabhupada says nothing stereotype. Krishna consciousness, nothing extent. Then there's the example of Ajamila. Then there's the example of Ajamila. And the example of Ajamila was born into very relatively high modes, Brahmin family. He was born into Brahmin family. And he associated with this very lusty woman and prostitute and like that. He associated there, and then he became quite a decadent, degraded fellow. Okay, so Prabhupada's giving these two examples. And okay, so the idea, the possibility here in Krishna consciousness is to get off the machine altogether. Now, if we study further, this Ajamila pastime, which is described right there at the beginning of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he degraded himself throughout the decades of his life, big decadence. And again, he was born. It's a very interesting juxtaposition that Prabhupada gives in this purport. Narada Muni from down to up and Ajamila from up to down. Very interesting juxtaposition. Okay, but then if we study the pastime of Ajamila, and there in the beginning of 6th, it's like such a very key part of Bhagavatam. So when there's a time for Ajamila to leave his body, and again, this very decadent fellow, apparently, he got all sorts of, like this, he was cheating and stealing and maybe murdering and very decadent, and all sorts of disgraceful activities. So then there became this kind of like a somewhat cosmic argument at the time of leaving his body, kind of like a cosmic argument, right? With so you had the Yamadus, the representative of the Yamaraj, to take him to like the hellish planets, these fearsome creatures. Fearsome creatures, so you thought, oh, these are like dull fellows, but they knew philosophy quite well. Like they speak quite erudite philosophy. Now, ultimately, their philosophy was superseded by the Vishnu Dutas. Okay, so they were taking Ajamila away to go to the hellish planet stuff. And that's kind of what's happening there at the beginning of the 6th canto. Right. Maharaj Parikshit starts, because at the end, the last chapter of the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami describes the hellish planets and very torturous, very suffering, pain, torment. The last 11 chapters or so of the 5th canto is about cosmology, astronomy, structure of the universe, different planets, three regions of heavenly planets, and right at the end, hellish planets, right there towards the bottom of the universe. So at the beginning of the 6th canto, Maharaj Parikshit, he's asking like, okay, so how can we not go there? How can we avoid to go there? So Shukadeva Goswami talks about, well, okay, so if you did some like impious activity or sinful activity, then you can rectify it with some atonement, some pious activity. That's the answer. And Maharaj Parikshit, even though he's in the role of student, he says to his teacher, his guru, Shukadeva Goswami, he says, nah, just like that. He said, nah, I don't accept that. I don't accept that answer. Wrong answer. So Shukadeva Goswami says, very good. I was just testing you. I knew it wasn't a good answer. I was just testing you. And that happens sometimes in Bhagavatam. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have examples of that where the guru is testing the student by giving kind of like, not necessarily like an incomplete or just answer to see like if you're paying attention and you really get it. Maharaj Parikshit said, no, that's not going to do it. So then Shukadeva Goswami gives some other incomplete responses. And then ultimately he gives the complete response, which is Bhakti Yoga. And it's Tasmat Kirtanam Vishnu. Jagan Mangalam Amhasam. It's Sankirtan, chanting Hare Krishna. Because, okay, so these other processes, like to use the garden analogy, right? There's the flowers and there's the weeds. Just like maybe there are all sorts of weeds. Be like all sorts of weeds. And then we might get a shears or a scissors and we clip the weeds. And then the garden looks nicer. It does look nicer. Okay, but we know those weeds are going to grow in a day or a week, a month, because we didn't pull it out of the root. So Shukadeva Goswami describes many processes, just like Bhagavad Gita describes many processes. But then Parikshit Maharaj, the student in the hero role, he knew enough. But we can atone, we can compensate, we can, please the demigods. We can do so many things. We can study, but it's not going to pull out at the root the desire to continue to implicate us in the machine of material energy. And then we're going to still need to do the heavenly planet, hellic planet, up, down, like that. So Shukadeva Goswami says, yeah, very good, very good. The fact is, they could have switched roles. Maharaj Parikshit could be on the Vyasa-san given the 7-day class. And Shukadeva Goswami could have been asking the questions. But as the pastime had it, they were in these roles. So right. So with engaging in this Bhakti Yoga, Vishaya Binivartate Niraharasi Dehinam Raso Varjam Masopyasat Param Drishta Nivartate. Yes, this gives the higher taste, and then we just lose the taste. We just lose the taste for those activities that implicate that grow the weeds, that implicate us in the machine of the material energy. So for that, this Bhakti Yoga, and of course the cornerstone, the process of Bhakti, is chanting. It's described earlier in the second canto. Etanirviti mananam ichatam akatobayam yoginam ripanir nitam harinamanu kirtanam. That whether one wants just to escape from suffering, or one has material desires, or one does want devotional service to Krishna, whatever. The doubtless and fearless course of action is to chant the holy names with sincerity, to chant the names of God, even if we have material desires. Akamasa kama moksha kamu daradi tivrena bhakti yogina yaje tapusham param. Okay, again, whether full of desires, or we want impersonal liberation, or we want devotional service, to engage in bhakti and Harinam Sankirtan with intensity. Tivrena means like intensified, like a sun ray through a magnifying glass, so intensified it can burn the paper, like that. So with intensity, and then whatever impure desires we have, they'll be purified. So right. So this is that proverbial one that gives value to the string of zeros. This engaging in Bhakti Yoga. This is the process that all other processes lead to. This is the process through which we actually come to engage in a direct relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the original love of the soul. That's satisfying for the spirit soul. And then in that sattvic and then Shuddha sattva consciousness, then we become naturally detached. We become indifferent to the pullings and pushings of the ropes, the modes of material nature. So this kind of detachment, it doesn't mean callous or uncaring. A devotee is very compassionate. Just the devotional heart is just like, yeah, I'm no longer caring about the drama of material life, the rajas, the tamas, and the devotee is intent to live purposefully. And then in that, then naturally, as described about Prahlad Maharaj, Paradukkha Dukhi, then naturally the devotee is experiencing the pain of others as his own pain. And it's not sentimental. The devotional heart, the Vaishnava heart, is truly caring about others and has knowledge how to relieve them from their pain and suffering, not just tinkering with the human context, not just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, not simply let's cover the rajas with tamas, or let's not just adjusting the modes. Okay, so yeah, to actually inspire the soul, facilitate the soul to awaken to itself, to a bliss that's not dependent on any aspects of the pandemic or the economics or what this person said or that person said, as Krishna says to Arjuna in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says, yeah, come to this bhakti consciousness, and you become indifferent to all that's been said and all that will be said. She said this, he said that, this sort of thing. We can go on and on. And then we're purposeful. And that intention to engage in the original service of the soul. And Krishna says, just like is said in this verse, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, that burns to ashes all levels, all degrees, all stages of karmic reaction. The stages that's a manifesting, that's deep in the seed form. It just burns the seeds to ashes. No other process will do that. That's why out of compassion, Shukadev Goswami is emphasizing that. Srila Prabhupada's emphasizing that. And in that, there's no discrimination, whatever someone's birth, whatever someone's activities. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Anasuya is here. Just yesterday, yeah, it was yesterday, I read Anasuya's responses to chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita course. And I was enlivened to read there, some conversations. Hare Krishna, Anasuya. So conversations between you and Lakshmi Priya, and you had some women's retreat there or something, and you were narrating how Lakshmi Priya shared with them, because maybe they found whatever the chanting or it's quite the intense and blatant bhakti atmosphere there at Prabhupada House. So Lakshmi Priya was saying, yes, well, there's maybe some of these ground rules. See, but these this is actually freeing you to be liberated women like that. And then you and Lakshmi Priya were speaking. She wrote this in her responses. How other attempts at personal growth that don't include that bhakti lata bij, and it's just hollow. It's just hollow. It's lacking the one in front of the zeros, empty. So, well, I think it's been almost 4 weeks since I've been at this morning program. It's been almost 4 weeks, and so we've been intensively engaged in advanced seminar in Colorado, Sofito 3 here in Gainesville, and just last night we had a post-advanced seminar online, post-advanced seminar event online, and almost all the participants were there. Yeah, almost all were there. And just after the event, Prabhupada came in to my office and said that was so enlivening. So it was so enlivening, and relates to this verse in purport, because the seminar had an interesting mix coming in. About half, they didn't know what Bhakti Yoga is, or they don't identify as devotees. And about half, because the seminar was organized by Vrinda Sundari, who's the co-director of a Bhakti Yoga temple. So about half, they were like practicing sadhakas, or sort of supposed to be. Okay, excuse me. So very, very, very sweet devotees, So in the sharing lesson, basically it was like a 2-hour sharing arc. So like from the first one who shared, like those who came into the seminar, not identifying as like bhakti yogis, I think there was everyone who shared, and they shared about how their whole experience of life is different and people are responding, and they all shared, And I'm chanting now. I'm chanting. Yes, I'm chanting 2 rounds per day, and I'm chanting, and I'm reading Science of Self-Realization, and I'm reading Ishopanishad, and they all got that, yeah, this is, wow, this is the one that gives the foundation to all the transformation. And so, and several of those who came in identifying as devotees, but were not, sadhakas, their sharing was also about how their family life is so much sweeter now, and just in their workplace, people are just transforming around them because they're, wonderful sharing. And then they shared, and now I am chanting 16 rounds per day again, which I haven't been doing for 20 years. And so, so this is very nourishing for my heart, nourishing for my heart. And also part of the sharing was those who have been sadhaka, then they a lot of their process was about responsible attention to the human experience, and without the spiritual bypass, and like that, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So it was very, very beautiful sharing, very beautiful sharing. Related here. And so, right, so because Prabhupada's talking about, so they're all associating with Prabhupada now. Right? And they're reading Prabhupada's books and chanting Hare Krishna, and which is coming through Prabhupada. Sadhu 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 Sarva Shastra Kurva Macha Sadhu Sadhu Sarva Siddhi, right? Even a moment association with the pure devotee. And Prabhupada makes the point here that by associating with chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the names of the Supreme, we're associating directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Krishna is non-different from his name. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was from God, and the Word is God. Right? So God's name, God's Word, non-different from God. Okay, I'll read the text again. Text 41, chapter 10, canto 2. Sattvam rajas tama iti tisra suratni naraka tatra pyekare kasho rajan bijante gatayas trita yadai kaikat terunyabyam swabhava upahanyate. According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into 3, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Hare Krishna, thanks for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome any comments, questions, realizations.
Hare Krishna, thank you for class this morning, because I haven't been able to join you in such a long time. And Mom and I have appointments this morning, but she's resting before we go out today. So I always love it when she can kind of listen in as you're giving class.
Nice.
And I just wanted to also share a little bit more with your responses from yesterday.
Yeah.
For the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. So the other piece that I had shared is that I felt really enlivened to share with this group of women that my spiritual master is Prabhupada, and that in his home, we serve Prabhupada, and that we give service to Prabhupada. And I just found that connection to be something that I didn't have when I first came to Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know who Prabhupada really was, even though he was always in your home temple. But
Sure.
I really didn't identify with Prabhupada, whereas Lakshmi Priya was the opposite of me. Like she was very naturally attracted to Prabhupada first, and I was attracted to Krishna. And so what I felt enlivened about is that, to just let these women know how much it is enriching and nourishing and beautiful to serve someone you care for deeply, that I really care deeply for Prabhupada. And that, to kind of keep that in the essence of everything that they did while they were at Prabhupada's house, is to think of it as serving their father. And so yeah, I'm just really connecting to not identifying so much with Krishna and God, but as serving Prabhupada. And then through serving Prabhupada, we're serving Krishna, we're serving God. And I just felt like that mode. So you were talking about the different modes. So that kind of passion to serve Prabhupada, I feel is like what gives me so much strength and courage and just strength. So I just want to I feel so enlivened that the house is being served in so many different capacities, and that so many women were engaged in service. Like it was really very, very potent, and we didn't have any Bhakti yogis there. And so it was even more powerful and exciting to see and witness.
Thanks for sharing, Anasuya. Very, very, very beautiful sharing. Yeah. So they're coming from a retreat, and they get to know Prabhupada through you and Lakshmi Priya, and they get to serve Prabhupada in his mission. And yeah, the mood that you described, that's the mood I aspire for. Yeah, we sing in the Guru Puja, Narottam Das Thakur song, Chakudana Dile, Janme Janme Prabhu say. That's the mood that, birth after birth, my bliss is, let me serve Prabhupada, let me serve my spiritual master. And I'm just, you have this childlike openness sharing about it. And yeah, we serve Prabhupada, and that's it. That's complete. And whatever Prabhupada wants to reveal to us about Krishna, if he wants to introduce us to Krishna, okay. But we're content to serve. That's the mood that's the mood we get from our parampara. Not like, well, I'll serve Prabhupada, then I can push him aside, and then it's me and Krishna. Let me just serve Prabhupada today and tomorrow and forever. Beautiful mood. Thanks for sharing.
Krishna.
Malini.
In the third canto, Lord Kapila, speaking with his mom, it describes the yogi, when the yogi perfects himself in self-realization and Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is still under the reaction of his past activities.
Yes.
And so his actions and his life is still under karma.
Okay.
Action.
The yogi.
Well, the yogi, but perfected in devotion.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I understand.
Kapila,
Lord Kapila says. And then in a purport and also in the verse, it sounds that he's fully aware that his actions are due to his past activities. However, he doesn't identify with his action.
Yeah.
And is completely fully absorbed in the Lord creating all the movement and all activities.
Yeah.
Being the supreme
Supreme mover, the prime mover
of everything. So it seems to be different. So I'm thinking of Narada Muni, like, okay, so Narada Muni did associate with the Bhaktivedanta, and he did, through Prashadam, all that, he understood that he's not this body, he understood the goal of life, he understood that he wanted to see Krishna. Yeah. And at the same time, we don't hear so much about the specific of his action, beside the fact that he went walking. Right. He walked to the cities and the hills and the villages, and he came to a lake, and then saw Krishna. So I was just meditating on that the combination of those two ideas, what you describe here, Yantra, Udani Maya, that vehicle doesn't change. Yeah. The vehicle is there, and the vehicle is not simply the body, it's the mind, it's activities, it's surrounding, it's friends, the vehicle is more than the body, it's everything else. Right. The way of acting, the way of speaking, the way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so I want to combine that idea of stepping out of the vehicle, but still being with it, but just seeing the vehicle moved by Krishna, basically. And whenever the vehicle moves, if we are not acting out of false ego, and we really accept that the Lord is moving it, the vehicle may do exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So you're bringing the Kapila Day teachings.
You know, like I think at the end of chapter 28 of the 12th canto.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems to me there's different stages of advancement and progress. And there's different stages. And so at one level, like it could still be like, yeah, kind of like the machine, the karma is acting. All right, but I'm less and less attached to it. But still it's acting. So let me do my best to use it for Krishna. Then there can be, let's call it like maybe a more complete stage of transcendence where there's no material karma. You know, there could be the stage where I'm just entangled in the karma, identifying with it. Okay, then let's say, according to my karma, let's say, you know, all I know is pasta and French fries. Say, for example. All right, so yeah, I'm not like transcendentally doing, you know, subgis and lassi like that. Yeah. But okay, so let me dovetail the propensity for French fries and pasta in Krishna service. You know, let me do my best. You know, not completely, because basically, you know, when I could prepare the pasta and French fries, it's basically for my tongue and belly. But okay, something I heard from Prabhupada, we do this offering, you know, and then there's the stage where there's no material karma, there's no material machine, and it's just completely surrendered to transcendence. And it, even if externally it might look like the material machine, that's just the illusion of the conditioned soul. Okay, just like, so let's say in a situation with Srila Prabhupada, you know, he wasn't like acting out his karma of a Bengali who was born in the late 19th century and trying to dovetail it for Krishna. Right? So he's a completely transcendental personality and completely transcendental, with a completely transcendental body that's appearing as, you know, someone who was born in Calcutta in 1896. And what you're saying, there's an interesting, you know, in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I think it's text 2. This relates to a book change, but it's an interesting thing. So in the purport, there's a place in the purport where in the, let's call it the pre-78 edition, Prabhupada writes something like, the devotee knows, the devotee realizes, that everything is done for Krishna. No, everything is done by Krishna. Now, starting in 83, the versions, it's like they took out the word by, and they put the word for. Right? The devotee knows that everything is done for Krishna. Right? Because, well, so by doesn't make sense, but like what you're sharing, everything for sure, Krishna, we hear that later, the devotee does everything for Krishna. But Prabhupada wrote by Krishna.
Yeah, it's very connected with
It's very connected.
That's what he says. You know, like everything is done by Krishna. But he still says like everything is done by Krishna, and the pure devotee is watching.
Witness.
What Krishna is doing.
Yeah.
And still a result of his past activities. So it's kind of an interesting combination in that specific place. And yeah, because it seems that maybe from an outsider, there is an outsider perspective.
Yeah.
there's a perspective of the pure devotee, and then there's a perspective of Krishna.
Yeah.
And I think what we are looking is at different angle of
Yeah.
perspective of looking at the same thing. But like it seems that the devotee is looking at his life, like, let's say, like Prabhupada and the bull in
Yeah.
Calcutta.
Right.
So I imagine the devotee is looking at, well, that's my past activities.
Right.
And it's done by Krishna.
We're talking about Prabhupada on the streets and got gored by a bull when he was trying to distribute Back to Godhead magazine. He got severely injured.
He got severely injured and was alone, and he had no money, and he had no house at the time. So, Tatenu Kampan, like, yes, the devotee will look at it.
That's Prabhupada's view.
Yeah. And at the same time, seeing that it's also acted by the Lord.
Yeah. In this discussion, I'm reminded of the 5th canto pastime of Maharaj Bharat. And I think there's a text, I think it's chapter 12, text 18. So that's when Bharat, he gets bewildered and he gets deviated from his staunch practice of bhakti and affection for the deer. And then he, then he's running after the deer because he's scared the deer will be injured, and falls and dies, leaves his body. So there's a purport, there's a verse where Shukadeva Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit, he's saying Maharaj Bharat was such on a high level of bhava, it could not have been his karma. And then in the purport, Prabhupada writes, it must have been his karma.
Yeah.
So it could seem clearly contradictory, but I think it's resolved by what you're saying, different perspective.
Yeah.
So it could look, there was this karma to develop the affection for the deer. And then there's that whole category of, like, it's not really material karma, but Krishna is using one's material karma for transcendental purposes.
Yeah.
So it's not just mechanical machine stuff.
Yeah. And the devotee is aware of that.
Yeah.
The devotee, like, okay, this thing happened, or I speak like that, or I do that, or this thing happened to me, and they still happen, and they see like that's my karma.
Yeah.
And also it's done by Krishna for a certain purpose, for Krishna.
Yeah.
For Krishna's purpose.
Yeah.
That makes that come.
Thank you. Vishnu.
What does it mean to be evil? Ajamila, it's inferred that Ajamila, like,
Evil. Yeah.
he lived righteously and then he achieved this certain birth, but then in like a split second, just not even intentional, like, he turned into a monster.
Who's that?
Ajamila.
Oh, Ajamila. Yeah.
Okay, the question of evil. Okay, thanks for your question. Yeah, and Ajamila is such a poignant example. So he lived an evil life. The way I see it, from Prabhupada's teachings, it's a continuum. It's a continuum, and well, first of all, everyone is purely good. Just about how many layers do we need to drill through to get to that pure goodness? But everyone's a spirit soul. No one's intrinsically at the core evil, even if we look at the worst people in history, or look at ourselves. So spirit soul is intrinsically good, and that pure diamond, that pure radiant, effulgent diamond gets covered by dust, dirt, maybe by 10 miles of mud, of stool. So the diamond is always good. So that's intrinsic to this philosophy. That's encouraging. And so then to whatever extent we're desiring separate from Krishna, it might be a heavy word, so we could say we're contaminated, we're impure. We could say, that's my evil. That's my evil. And then let's see. Yeah, thank you, Anasia. Thank you, Anasia. Wish you and your mother a fine day in Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And so then Ajamil, that's the thing. I appreciate your question, because the whole thing with Ajamil, he was like deeply evil. Okay, he was deeply evil and like that, and he had such good opportunity from birth. He had such blessings from birth. Really squandered it and became this evil person. But then that's kind of the point. Why is that passing in the Bhagavatam? Because this chanting of the names of God, it's just like, it's so powerful that it just pierces through all those layers. And he Ajamila prapumsam ante narayana smriti. He achieved the perfection of life, absorption in God, liberation back to Godhead at the time of death. It wasn't quite so simple, but more or less. So that's the thing. So he's got this thick evil. So even if we, think of Hitler or Stalin, these kind of famous, infamous evil personality, like that. But the idea is chanting the name of God is more powerful than even the thickest layers. So, so the general propensity, not to do artificial humility, it's generally like to humbly see the evil in ourselves and to have a generous perception of others. Sometimes, of course, it might be our service to help so a Vaishnav is not looking to find faults, the evil in others. At the same time, the Vaishnav does not deny his or her perceptions. And sometimes it's their service to share their perceptions out of true compassion to support someone. So it's so any contamination of the modes, even material sattvas, what to speak of rajas or tamas, we could say that's some evil. There's something in me that wants the prison life, that wants to not align with the guidelines of the government of serving Krishna. So it's a continuum. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.